Imagine someone who spends all their time lifting in the gym. Now imagine throwing that person in the octagon against someone who isn't as physically fit, but an experienced fighter. Even if the lifter's bigger, stronger, and overall more physically fit, they won't stand a chance against someone who's a trained fighter. This is what game sense is. In this analogy, the lifter in Counter-Strike is someone who spends all of their time aim training, deathmatching, and shooting bots. Even if you have extreme mechanical prowess, this will only take you so far against opponents that will outmaneuver, outsmart, and predict everything you do. In this video, I'm going to share exactly what game sense is, what it looks like, and key ways to fast track your game sense improvement. Have you ever watched high elo bullet chess and wondered, how the hell are they moving the pieces so quickly while maintaining good position? This is due to pattern recognition. These chess players can't spend time on every move considering every possibility and react so quickly at the same time. Rather, these players have been in the same or similar positions thousands of times. Instead of having to think critically about every move, they intuitively move the pieces as a result of their past experience and training. This same concept applies to Counter-Strike. Pro players and high elo players alike have no problem quickly adapting to situations that develop throughout the round simply because they've been there before, thousands of times. The reason why I say this is because developing better game sense will heavily depend on our ability to recognize these patterns within the game. Recognizing these patterns comes from one place: experience. With that said, absolutely nothing beats just playing the game, and I'm sure you know this. But there are ways to speed up this process so we don't waste any of our time playing without developing game sense. First, we have to reframe how we view Counter-Strike. Unlike chess, CS is what people consider an imperfect information game. A perfect information game is one where all the information is available to each player. In chess, all the pieces are visible to both players, therefore, the only information that isn't available to the player is their opponent's intentions. An imperfect game would be something like Texas Hold'em poker. Each player is unaware of the cards the other players are holding. The only way to discover this information about the opponent is to analyze their actions via a sequence of bets or hands that were previously revealed. Similar to poker, the most important principle in Counter-Strike is to discover information about the enemy team. The more we can clue ourselves into their positions, guns, economy, and tendencies, the better chances we have of making informed decisions which ultimately lead to round wins. Gathering information is a skill within itself, but so is recognizing patterns. Both of these two concepts are what builds overall game sense. And that's great and all, but that's not why you're here. Let's start talking about how we can improve both of these skills so we can fast track our improvement to have better game sense. Hands down, the best way to gather information being given by the enemy team is through communicating with your teammates. The unfortunate part about this sometimes is your teammates just won't talk. But due to the minimap and our good situational awareness, they don't have to. When your teammate spots an enemy, they appear in the minimap as a red dot. And even if they're just spotted for a moment, they'll linger on the minimap as a question mark. But none of this matters if we aren't constantly checking our minimap for information. The best way to make sure we're checking the minimap is to first make a conscious effort to do so. While we're playing and not actively engaging the enemy or expect to engage the enemy, some of our time should be dedicated to solely focusing on the information that is being displayed on our radar. Failure to do so will often result in information being lost while our teammates refuse to talk. But instead of just looking to see where the enemy is, you should also be taking into consideration where your teammates are. This is equally as important. Analyzing your team's setup as the round develops will clue you into where the enemy could be and where the gaps are in your setup. When I watch demos in low elo, I constantly see players caught off guard from someone who found the gap and exploited the opening that they discovered. Simply just being aware of what's happening on the map could be the difference in winning and losing some rounds. More times than not, when you die, it's due to a mistake that you made. Of course, there are going to be exceptions for this, but for the most part, this holds true in all cases. The most important thing to do after death, once you're done passing off information to your teammates, is to start analyzing why you died. When I started my climb to level 10, and even to this day, every time I die during a match, I pause and reflect on my mistakes. Doing this will ensure that whatever lesson there is to grab from this will result in enforcing that pattern recognition process to happen. I cannot stress enough how important this is. If you find yourself finding excuses for your deaths, whether that be blaming your teammates, CS2 is a game, or anything outside of your own actions, it's important to recognize this and start accepting accountability for your own performance. Failure to do so will result in a limited improvement process and your inability to recognize the patterns that you discovered in-game. Another thing I want to add is that there's going to be situations where you die and the person that is actually responsible for your death or a round loss will be someone else. But just because this is true doesn't mean that there isn't anything to learn from it. Whatever that can be possibly gathered from any situation is beneficial for your learning process. However, sometimes it isn't always clear why you died or what you could have done better. But this is exactly where watching demos comes into play. When you watch your own demos, it can make things abundantly clear to how or why you died, and what you could have done better. Sometimes all it takes is to watch the scenario play out from the enemy's perspective. This is also where having a coach really comes in handy. Not everyone can afford a coach, and I completely understand that, but if you can, I strongly recommend it. If you're looking for a good coach, I recommend reaching out to Polo or Kojimo. I've worked with both of these guys and I've had nothing but outstanding experiences with the both of them. Both of their contacts can be found in the description. Also, while we're on the topic of watching demos, I strongly advise that you check out pro player VODs and see how they're playing. Every time I watch a pro player, I'm able to learn something from it and apply it to my own games. A great resource for this is LIMCSPOV. Link to that channel will be in the description. Everyone knows that economy management is important in CS, but what is equally as important that a lot of players don't consider is the economy of the enemy team. It should not come as a complete mystery what the other team is working with as far as money goes. But of course, there is no real way of knowing with any level of certainty whether a team will force or save in most circumstances. But it should not come as a complete surprise when the teams rush your site with Tech-9s in a flash. Having a general understanding of the enemy team's economy will lead to you being better prepared for the upcoming round. A good tool to start understanding where the enemy team stands with money is open the scoreboard and hover over the loss bonus. Depending on how many rounds a team loses in a row will increase their loss bonus. A general rule of thumb is the larger the loss bonus, the higher probability the enemy team will force buy or have a full buy rather than an eco. But again, I strongly suggest doing more research on this to better understand the mechanics of economy in CS. This concept is also heavily influenced by elo, region, and enemy playstyle. Based on the behavior and tendencies of the players that you're currently playing against, your decision should adapt over the course of a match. For example, on Ancient, if Ts are constantly fighting for B through ramp, it would be smart to shift the CT setup so 3 people start on B while someone spots mid and A. Of course, in a solo queue environment, this can be difficult to coordinate, especially with unwilling teammates. But you can situate yourself in a position for success if you know they're coming up ramp by maintaining control of cave for retake efforts, or simply fight ramp in preparation for the T push. Now this is just one example. This video would be hundreds of hours long if I were to continue to try to provide all the potential situations that can arise on every map. But this is why playing the game is so important. You'll end up seeing all of these situations over time and become better at responding to them. It's very important that you actually do make these adjustments in game to try to encounter these intentions from the enemy team. Figure out what does work. Figure out what doesn't work. This will result in overall better understanding of the game and a higher level of game sense. Not everything is black and white in Counter-Strike. There won't always be a situation where X happens, so Y should be your response. The game is fluid and always changing. A prime example of this is player advantages. If your team has more players alive than the enemy team, your decision making should change, and vice versa. Generally speaking, if your team has more players alive, you should be more reluctant to take 1v1 fights to avoid giving the enemy team a chance of getting back into the round. On the flip side of this, if your team is at a player disadvantage, it's okay and honestly a good idea to try to take 1v1s to help bring your team back into the round. And while we're talking about this, during retake scenarios, it's important to consider spacing between you and your teammates. This is something that I've personally been working on myself. Based on when you swing an angle and where your teammate is in relation to you is important because to the maximum extent possible, you want to be tradable. Being in a tradable position is one of the most important concepts to master in order to prevent your team from finding themselves in a player disadvantage. The last concept I want to cover I honestly think is one of the most important ones. That is, finding a gap. What I mean by this is exploiting how the enemy team is set up, whether it be on T side or CT side. I don't mean taking the long flank from B apps to T spawn on Mirage, but rather finding a not so obvious opening that the enemy team is allowing you to take advantage of. Doing this properly takes a lot of practice, understanding standard defaults, the ability to absorb information being given to you, and overall excellent situational awareness. Basically, it's a culmination of everything we've already covered. A prime example of this is a play that actually happened to my team during ESEA playoffs last season. The guy who made this play is a player named Viz, who's on the active roster for Party Astronauts. As the round starts, we see Viz work outside with cross smokes up. He works his way through the smoke without a flash, which is honestly a risky play but ultimately works out. Following this, we see Viz's team get stopped in ramp, leaving him in a 2v5. Luckily for him, the other remaining player on his team still has the bomb, so the round isn't completely lost. What we're about to see is something not a lot of players are capable of doing. He completely lets the Opera go by him and then hears someone go up ladder. He ends up never seeing Wilson holding ramp, but I'm led to believe that if he did, he also probably would have let him live. Then this is where we lose the round. He comes up ladder, takes me out, then kills both of our A-side players, which lets his remaining teammate with bomb come out hut. Then he looks for the Opera, which is 1 HP and also kills him. Then while he's reloading, he's peeking down hell, which honestly is the only misplay I can gather from this clip. Wilson ends up losing the round in a 1v1, which honestly I don't blame him for. He was left in a really terrible 2v1 situation where he had to retake the site with no information on the planter. Viz knew once his team went down that a play needed to happen, and he did just that. He found the gap, demonstrated incredible trigger discipline, gathered information on our team, and then almost flawlessly executed by nearly acing us in a 2v5 situation. The reason why I picked this play is because anyone can do this. It doesn't take insane mechanical skill to swing rounds in your favor. What I mean by this is mechanical skill can be the reason why you win a lot of rounds, but you can also win a lot of rounds by just being smarter than who you're playing against. After losing this round, we lost a lot of energy. This round led into an eco round which we also lost. And after forcing the game into overtime, we lost the game. But after the best of 3 was over, we won 2 maps, and because of this, we were promoted to ESEA main. At the start of the video, I mentioned that game sense is something that takes a long time to develop, and it isn't something that can be fixed overnight or with one YouTube video. Becoming a better player happens over the course of countless games. But I hope the things that I mentioned in the video can help you change the way you see the game and help you better develop game sense. Before I close out, I want to shout out all the Ride or Die YouTube members. I know I say it every time, but I seriously cannot thank you enough for the support. Also, we're really close to 10,000 subscribers, and because of which I'll be hosting a knife giveaway in the Discord as a thank you to anyone who's joined the community. So if you want to take part of it, be sure to subscribe and join the Ride or Die Discord. Anyway, that's all I got. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. Thanks for watching.